Good day, everyone, and welcome to our second viewing of world-class cooking for solving global challenges. This is selection number 2 on the menu. We're being joined again by Unica Mercer-Laurent and Leif Edmondson, the global thinkers on this very important subject of solving global challenges. This is a very fun book, as I said in part 1, but it's also a very serious book. And in the first course, Leif and Unica spoke about institutional failures and societal failures as part of the shift from the trade of goods to the trade of ideas. They also spoke about greening, digital information, and social innovation. However, it's important to understand that technology supports all of these according to Unica. Change requires many ingredients, therefore many influencing factors. It's dynamic, is the same as a master chef in the kitchen. So for critical thinking to solve global challenges, we really have to have the ability to understand the bigger picture and create the steps or list of ingredients with a recipe to solve these challenges. As Leif mentioned in the first chapter of the book, World-Class Cooking for Solving Global Challenges, it's all about balancing, which is what the cover shows, that someone has to balance those plates to make sure that everything's working together. So the two of you propose in this book to consider societal innovation with an analogy to cooking and the importance of being able to balance all of the right ingredients in a recipe. Unica, can you speak to the challenges France faces today, including the French experiments with history and innovating society today? In other words, your first chapter of part 2, fat cows and thin cows, and why cooking? Over.
Yes, because after the Second War, it was an explosion of industry and many activities. And General de Gaulle was really someone with a great vision for France. And he had alliances and he built this evolution of French industry. He set several new institutions as Centrale for Energie Atomique and for informatics, for information sciences, and some others. And everybody worked very hard and they were successful. I was talking about fat cows and thin cows. It's as you know from the Bible, the Pharaoh had a dream, and he asked to Joseph to explain, and Joseph explained it about cows. It is today we have many things to eat, but we have to be careful because thin cows are coming. Then they gathered things together, but in the government, they gathered nothing. They wasted many things. And that's why we have, first of all, they was not able to predict what will happen with the planes, with the development of internet. Globalization came. And with the globalization, the people was looking for a cheaper task force, and they relocated out things, and we had less work for the local people. And in the same time, because France was prosperous, many immigrants, especially from the previous colony, came to France, and it was not really managed. This immigrant was not managed. And when globalization came and the crisis came, it generated unemployment. And that's why innovation was extremely important at this moment. Because with all these constraints as unemployment, immigration, and second wave of immigration, the young people who are much more attracted by easy money from dealing drugs and terrorism, etc., then it was necessary to manage all of this. And that's why we needed a strong chef de cuisine.
Yeah, good.
Yes, and note the good-looking food from France in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. So I want to go to that restaurant one day. And Unica, can you talk a little bit about why cooking? You were talking about the paradigm shift and the need for President Macron's reforms.
Yes, we can say that when he came, he was elected president. He had to face a very big challenge because everything was necessary to change everything in the society. And even when he became the president, he has to manage existing constraint, very strong constraint, to bring the people together from the other parties, because he is in the middle, in fact, not left, not right, but in the middle. And he still have the ambition for France to change, to make France to become leader again, and to use the capacity of people. Then he elaborated the reforms and tried to this reform cover everything. And he started with retirement reform, because we have the system, very complex system, with 48 cases, and they build a simulator. Then everybody can simulate using simple technology on the web. Now the retirement. Of course, as French people like revolution, the people contested this. They contested, and we had this Gilets jaunes movement. And then it show up that when we want to change something in the society, it's extremely difficult, because the people are used to have, especially in France, social advantages. And if you touch a little bit to this, they're not happy.
So kind of a disruptive innovator. Macron is a disruptive innovator. So Leif.
On my, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so Leif, so in this conversation of how to manage disruptive innovation to avoid rejection and involve influencers, as Unica was speaking of, you relate to the importance of communication and pilot programs and testing a new recipe. Can you talk about that in relation to running a restaurant, and then also the importance of collaboration?
I think what this book is sharing with us is a lot of interesting analogies, and I will add one more, and that is many of us have seen MasterChef, the TV program about competing chefs, and that is also an educational program which goes back to the famous French chef Paul Bocuse, who initiated the World Championship in cooking. And now we see that this is becoming a kind of an amusement program, but also educational program where they have master chefs in the young age of kids around 10 years or even less doing the MasterChef TV programs. So I think this is communication of tastes or tasting of other senses than the traditional senses. This was known also by the old Greece and the old Romans. So what I think is important is to learn that we have to go beyond the traditional accounting and look into what I called many years ago the longitude navigation, where the longitude is going beyond latitude and altitude and adding the third dimension. And the third dimension is so visible as longitude in the cooking. And that's the balancing of at least 3 points in the gyro, like we have spoken about before. And this is very, very obvious in a kitchen. You have to balance a lot.
Yeah. Very good. So, Unica, going back to the idea that change is supported by technology, can you walk us through the relational concept of technology in the kitchen to digitization and artificial intelligence?
Yes, we have already a lot of helps in the kitchen, but it's on the picture here. It's electronic kitchen, everything. You have a robot and you have a recipe and so on. But it's helpful, but in the same time, it's switching off the brain. Because if you have something ready, your creativity is killed. Because you cannot invent it with this. You have the recipe, you follow the recipe, and you cannot add some innovation to that. And we have to be careful with technology. It is important to use it wisely. And especially in the kitchen, the innovation is something very important, because if you want to invent new things, and today it's a trend to back to local, to back to season food, the ingredients we have in our garden, in the close places, and that's why the innovation and creativity is extremely important. And of course, it can be amplified by technology, but before we have to use our brain.
Excellent. So Leif, in the section on paradoxes, you discussed the value of work as it relates to the ability to take advantage of disruptive innovations to guide transformation and reform. How important is it to have different thinking and ideas to have the ability to make them into reality? In other words, using your brain.
I like to use my brain at least, and sometimes others' brains as well. But I would like to go back to what Unica was referring to, the technology. One of the masters of cooking in Sweden, he was applying physics. So he was a trained master of civil engineering, and he applied that in the kitchen. And he trained one other successful master chef and learned her to cook potato. And he told that you should take off the potato from the oven at roughly 52 degrees and leave it there. Then you get the best crystallization in the potato. And that is physics. And he had a lot of physics in training her. So this is perhaps part of the paradox, that you can apply chemical knowledge to get very, very good food. But you also know that the paradox is that if you add a little bit sugar, the medicine goes down, as it says in the film. With a little bit of sugar, the medicine goes down. And the ingredient there is that some ingredients are poisonous, like sugar. So we need to replace sugar and have it without sugar. And this is still to come, but it's starting to spread around the world now. But I would like to add also the cultural part of the paradox. And perhaps you know that the French cuisine was born in Japan. So Paul Bocuse was...
You're kidding!
Paul Bocuse was on training in Japan, and he learned to decorate the food as they do in Japan, which then in the French version became two haricots verts on top of the plate. And And that is a cultural import from Japan to design the food very tastefully. But to be able to do that, you need prototyping. As Lynn was saying, you need to learn to put the 2 sticks of haricot vert in a nice way on the plate.
Very good. And that, of course, relates directly to the way you have to conduct business and helping
Yes.
cultures transform. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Unique, can you briefly describe your recipe for cooking for France?
Recipe. And as I said previously, it's a lot of creativity. Leif said about the potatoes. We have 300 of cheeses and I think around 100 of potatoes. Then your recipe is not good for all potatoes. Maybe Swedish potatoes are not are different. Then we have to adapt to local and prepare, have this, as Leif said, knowledge of chemistry and physics and how to obtain the right result. The same for sugar. Not only white sugar is bad for health, but brown sugar and the best, it's honey. Instead of using sugar, you can use honey. And especially it's very, very tasty, combined with some herbs we have in Garrigue in the south of France. And we have also to think about the errors, because sometimes the good things come from errors. As I mentioned 2 examples of the sweets and apple cake. There was one from errors, but we have more of these examples. And sometimes we think this is not good, but in fact it is good.
So we need to be able to tolerate risk-taking when we're making societal changes, yes?
Yes, and we have to.
But we also need to think about the chemistry of that to ensure that we don't hurt anybody, right? Yeah.
And especially chemistry between the people, because, for example, we have a various culture. Sometimes we can learn from the other culture, not haricot vert because it's expensive. It's not enough to eat, but with combination of various tastes. As for example, we have some nice plate, some nice meal from North Africa, from the other countries, and even from Sweden, because we have IKEA and they sell meatballs.
Yes.
I'm not fan.
Okay, so I just want to say I think chapter 3 is really of great significance in your book. It really discusses the prototyping for societal innovation. So you shift then from the cooking back into the actual prototyping and for societal innovation concept. And in this segment, I think it's important to have as you say, a 360-degree view of societal innovations prior to understanding societal prototyping. And that will also be covered in course number 3, which will follow this course number 2 at a later date, along with desserts. But I just think, Leif, if you can explain for the viewer the difference between societal innovation, right, and social innovation, and then the importance of societal prototyping, along with a few examples from the book, such as Sophia Antipolis and the concept of the future centers.
Yeah, I was very, very inspired of Sophia Antipolis, which is, of course, the god of wisdom, Sophia. And this science park in outside Nice is really remarkable. And I think it's around 60 years old now. It was the first science park in Europe. And we have now a number of them. There is also a special part of it, which was developed by us in Scandia. We call it Future Center. But going back to your question, the difference between societal innovation and social innovation might be illustrated by the case of schooling. In Sweden, we got public schooling for kids 1842, and that was a law. And the lawmaking is societal development. And that's why we are seeing some of the problems with the vaccination, because the vaccination are based on regulation, but they mix it up with lawmaking, and then it becomes closed down and a mess of all of it, actually. So therefore, it's extremely important to develop the skill of societal innovation. And in Japan, they talk about society 5.0 now. And this society of 5.0 has, of course, some similarities to how the Romans once developed society of Europe with roads. And we have internet and web systems. But do we really have the recipes for it yet? With this communication in between people, as you said, the chemistry dimension. I do think that we lack it. And that's why it's so important to work with societal 6.0 together with Noboru Kono in Japan and people in France, and perhaps find the next generation of Sophia Antipolis.
Thank you.
I would like to add also that in the book, we have actually a model for societal innovation.
It's for dessert.
Yes, but we have described.
Next time.
Yeah, next time. Aha.
Yes, so we'll continue that in more detail in the next version of the series of the briefings. I think it's critical that we go into that in detail because it gives people the visual, the mental picture, and the understanding of what can really happen when you build around the future centers and work in that kind of an environment, what it can actually do to society. So in a good way. So Unica, in this chapter 3, you also cover the influence of technology. Can you give us just a tiny taste of what you will cover in this section, as we will detail that in course number 3?
In terms of technology, we have technology everywhere now. Then there are many robots, drones, especially robots for elder people to take care, to help. And in agriculture, it's extremely technological now, agriculture, because we can have information on in real time on weather change, on raining, on quality of soil, what to produce. But what is necessary, for example, in agriculture, is to connect the past knowledge with new technology, because from the past we know the things that replace what is used in agriculture today, insecticides and artificial fertilizer, which is not good for health, not only sugar, but we have a lot NPK in our food. And it's important to connect this past knowledge about how to cultivate the soil with a new technology that help people to do it better. And we have maybe a global view. And it is also some new things about farming as aquaponic. Then in the same time, we can cultivate. It's much more than that, because, for example, today we have a lot of data, and this data is stored in data centers, and these data centers need cooling. And the heat from the data center is distributed into schools, and may also heat the water. And in the water we can cultivate things and grow fishes, which clean the water, etc. Then this circular economy, it's also a societal innovation, because it introduces a new way of doing. And this is international. It's not France, Sweden, and the other. It's the same for everybody. Maybe it's a solution.
Wonderful. So as we know, COVID-19 triggered new attitudes around the globe. And from your book, you talk about the fact that each country elaborated on its own strategy of managing the crisis. In France, people were totally confined for 3 months. In course 3, Unica will begin the conversation with the influence of technology on societal innovation, where the authors will also cover the importance of technology as a game changer for cities and regions, and try to answer the question, can home be a wise space? And we'll go into more details on the prototyping with Leif during that session, and then they'll deliver dessert. So, Unica and Leif, do you have any closing comments?
Yes, Unica, you start and I finish.
Again, we need in the same time the system and holistic view of the cuisine and society. And we are a part of various contexts. It is the same in cuisine.
It is very much, and actually it's called Intellectual Capital Accelerator, where you accelerate the human capital by technology. Otherwise, you couldn't go to Mars, for example. But I would like to amplify the wise space of home with a phrase from a famous American restaurant, and that is a happy meal.
Very good. So to our viewers, please don't forget you can order this book, World Class Cooking for Solving Global Challenges, from Emerald Publishing. And so we close today with bon appetit, right?
Bon appetit.
Bon appetit.
Thank you.
Thank you.